So the word flow has become quite a popular buzzword in the wellness community, but what does the word flow actually mean? Now, if you're into yoga, then you probably know flow as this transcendental experience or this state of altered consciousness. If you're an athlete, then you know flow as being in the zone. And if you're an anime fan, then you know flow as going Super Saiyan or plus ultra. Now, all of those definitions are correct, but the word flow is actually a term coined by author and psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who literally wrote the book on flow, and he defines it as the state of optimal experience. Now, some of the characteristics of flow are a loss of self-consciousness. Not to be confused with you going unconscious, but basically your sense of self or your inner critic pretty much disappears. Another characteristic is a feeling of intense enjoyment. When you're in flow, whatever activity that elicits that state is pretty much its own reward. You're completely locked in and immersed in that moment, in that activity, and you're having the time of your life. You also experience effortlessness and control. Pretty much while you're in flow, your actions just become automatic. While in flow, there's also a distorted sense of time. Time either slows down or speeds up depending on the activity that you're doing. It's kind of like when you're having a stimulating conversation with somebody and you're so engaged that you just lose track of time. The reason for that is you were basically in a state of flow. Now, contrary to popular belief, flow is not the state in which learning takes place. It's actually an expression of what you already know. For example, think back to a moment where you were learning something new for the first time. An example I often like to use is learning how to drive for the first time. Now, think back to that moment when you got behind the wheel. What were some of the feelings that you were expressing? You were probably very nervous, very anxious, very self-conscious, frustrated at times. And if your experience was anything like mine, you probably cried a couple of times. I highly recommend not getting your parents to teach you how to drive. The point is, during the learning process, you're very conscious and you're distracted by your frustration. When you got behind the wheel, you were super focused on what you were doing. Hands at 10 and 2, checking your rear view mirror, making sure that you're not distracted by anything. This caused a lot of frustration and anxiety, so much so to the point where it actually brings you out of flow because all of your brain's resources and energy is focused on acquiring the skill that you don't yet have. But what happens when you get better at the skill? You eventually get more comfortable, you get more relaxed, and it became more of an autonomous practice in a sense. So just to recap, flow is not the state in which learning takes place. Learning actually gets triggered in the first phase of flow, known as the struggle phase. And in the next slide, I'll cover some of the other phases of flow.